joining us now to weigh in on these military-related issues. He would know a little something about war. Retired Navy SEAL officer, Chief Talent Officer at Overwatch Mission Critical, our pal, Mike Sarraille, back on the program. Mike, nice to see you so soon again, but it's a good thing. We're not talking about waging war and needing special operators like you and others. We're talking about peace and trying to negotiate peace talks. This is great. Trump said he was going to do it. Here we are. Let's start in Ukraine first, right? Because this one's been raging now for 2 years, right? This month, I believe. And it looks like, except for Zelensky being a little unhappy, that we're going to get all parties to the bargaining table. Trump's going to play hardball and get this one shut down. The borders might look a little different than they did before the war, but at least people will stop dying.
Well, first off, don't work special operations out of a job. There's always use for special operations, even in non-declared war.
True. Sorry about that.
To push our interests forward, here's the thing. Zelensky is not the only one who's upset. So is Europe. And the Europeans are going to complain about everything these days, that they're not involved in the talks. They've had 2 years alongside their World Economic Forum view of the world and the Biden administration. They've had 2 years to solve this. So for the Europeans and Zelensky, it's almost like you're putting them at the end of the table and saying the two adults are speaking. We're calling you when we want input. This war has to end. Zelensky wants nothing more than to pull NATO and the United States into a enduring potential broader conflict. And we're not going to let that happen, nor is the Ukraine going to join NATO. And we're definitely not giving Zelensky power over a nuclear weapon. So I'm confident that Putin and Trump and their respective teams are going to find a resolution to this conflict. And you're right, it's not going to look like the Ukraine prior to the start of the conflict.
And you know what? If I recall, and you go back, a bunch of the ones living on the east side of Ukraine are all Russian descent, speak Russian, have Russian ties, and don't even want to be part of Ukraine. So, I mean, I get it's a power struggle and all that, but it sounds like a lot of the citizens, the residents, might be fine if the lines are redrawn a bit, if they all can have peace.
It's a very complex history. There's a lot of ethnic groups that are merged together. So at the end of the day, we would rather see the completion of this conflict, the cessation of this conflict in order to move forward and have peace in that region. And the Europeans are just going to have to accept whatever is broken.
There you go. All right. Now let's get to the Middle East. Something that you and your colleagues on the SEALs know a lot about, going in and doing operations there for the last how many decades since 9/11. We've got, a conflict that was started by a terror group, worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust, 1,300 killed in a few hours. Here we are. How many, year and a half, 2 years later, I don't know how long it's been since this one too. These two wars started during Biden, hopefully coming to an end. Not all parties are going to agree on how this is handled. They didn't adhere to releasing every single hostage. They only released a few more over the weekend. What do you think, Mike, the next step should be? You've heard Bibi and Trump say the same things. If you don't release them and we don't get a resolution, all hell will break loose.
And that is a very likely possibility, is that this ceasefire is so fragile. But it does show that Hamas is one. There's multiple factions within Hamas. They are so disorganized. They'll probably have an issue finding all the hostages, whether dead or alive.
Oh.
But I will tell you, there's going to be multiple phases to this. This will move to phase 2, which will be the release of further hostages. Once we have all the hostages back, hopefully, in my mind, there is a continuation of the systematic elimination of Hamas, because this war is not over until every Hamas operative is killed. And then you're going to see a dispute over the control of Gaza to rebuild it so that it is no longer a terrorist safe haven. Very complex.
Yep. And that's why Trump says maybe we need to relocate everyone, Jordan or Egypt, that we can root out who are regular citizens and who are Hamas sympathizers and who's actually Hamas. And then you rebuild it. And depending on who's allowed to come back, you make sure Hamas or any other terror group, Hezbollah, the UD, never takes over again. Because let's be real, this war started because of them. And then all they did was take up camp in Gaza behind innocent people. And what do you expect Israel to do? So it's gonna look like a whole different world in the Gaza Strip and the Middle East after this is done too. And this is not going to be an easy solution or easy fix. Mike Sarraille, as always, man, we appreciate your input on stuff. You take care.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep.